So this is the biweekly meeting of the Storage Special Interest Group for Kubernetes. Today is November 9, 2017. I'm going to share my screen so that people can see the agenda doc. Steve Wong pasted the agenda doc in the chat window, so feel free to add to it. Can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So first on the agenda, we're going to do a planning spreadsheet. I'm going to try to time bound it to 20 minutes. Let's see how it goes. First up, block volume support. Aaron, do you want to give an update here?
Yeah, we are desperate. I guess it's the only good word I can use that's proper here to get the API merged. I've been pinging Clayton. I mean, everything should be ready to go. We're starting to enter the rebase hell and conflicts, so it's holding everything up. We have a lot of code that's ready to roll. I think the last piece is the plugins. I'm working on those this week, so there we are.
Okay. Is there anything I can do to help escalate, or are we just waiting on Clayton?
You can also try Jordan Rickett. He has API approval rights now.
Oh, okay. I will do that. Thank you, Jan. I will
Perfect.
talk to Jordan after this meeting then. Thanks.
Okay, sounds good. Next up is scheduler binding logic. Michelle? I think Michelle is walking over right now, so we'll just skip that and come back to it. Containerization of mount dependencies. Jan?
Still on review.
Okay. No problem. Okay, next up is out of tree volume plugin CSI. This is a work in progress. We have a lot of work underway. It's a very tight deadline, but I'm optimistic. For folks who are interested, you can follow along. We have meetings 3 times a week, and I'll paste that link into the chat window for folks who are interested in following that. I can't figure out how to get into the chat from here. Here we go. But we have a little over 2 weeks until code freeze, or just about 2 weeks. And we're hoping to make it. A lot of the components are external out of tree, which gives us a little bit of a buffer, but we want to make sure that all the in-tree components land on time. The design is pretty much ready to be merged. I have a meeting with him after this to go over any last open issues, and hopefully we can get that merged soon. Next up is generic storage topology. I have not started working on that. I'm going to punt that until after code freeze, since that's primarily design work. Next up is volume resizing. Hemant, do you have an update here?
Still it's a work in progress. I'm yet to open a PR, but yeah, I hope to do it by this, like in a couple of days.
Okay. Sounds good. And Michelle just walked in, so we're going to ask her what the status of scheduler and binding logic is.
Oh, yeah. So I have all the PRs out for review now. I'm probably, I'm going to schedule some time with both Bobby and Jan to walk through the PR because it's kind of big. But I tried to break it down into smaller commits that are easier to review. So, yeah.
Cool. Looking good. Next up is Snapshots. Jing, are you on the line?
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, we haven't done much for this moving into now. So I think based on the current workloads, we might need consider to put it on Q1.
Okay. That is perfectly okay. And is the rest of the team aware of this? The folks who've been working on this.
So I will try to like sync up with them. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. PV taints and tolerations we crossed off the list. Local storage, static pre-provisioner, security hardening. Cheng, do you want to give an update here? Looks like Cheng might not be there. Michelle, can you give a status update?
Chang's been working with some of the security folks here on discussing. So I think he's still trying to evaluate there's like two main approaches right now. So he's trying to evaluate those two and which one we want to go with.
Cool. And we had this as we were going to go to alpha this quarter, so it's possible that we might not be able to.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's okay.
And all of this is still out of tree.
Perfect. Next up is enabling kubectl to expose capacity isolation resource management information. Jing, do you want to talk about this?
Yes, I think it's kind of part of the work in monitoring metrics.
Okay.
So it's kind of in progress. So we've been discussing quite a lot with monitoring team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a item here tracking monitoring just as one whole item?
No.
Okay.
So it's kind of for this, it's more like part of the capacity isolation feature. So we didn't. I have a document put all the related tasks, but it's not a feature. So this task is part of the capacity isolation feature.
Okay. So could we clean up this doc and collapse those items down? So it'll make it easier to track the status.
Yes. So I already have a doc, but I will see like maybe modify it so it can be public. Yeah.
Okay. No, I mean in this spreadsheet, if we can remove instead of having separate line items.
Okay. I see. Sure.
Okay. Thank you. And so is number 13 also part of that?
Yes.
Okay. And so for both of these, the status is currently it's on track. Okay. Next up is exposing PVC capacity usage stats. Vipav, are you there?
Yeah, I am. I haven't been able to get started on this yet. And just given we have 2 weeks remaining, I don't think I'll be able to get to it right now.
Okay.
So,
We'll move to the next one.
So for exposing PVC, we have Xin also working on this on our monitoring pipeline. So kubectl will be just part of it. So Xin is also working on expose PVC metrics. It's part of the monitoring metric work. Yeah.
That's great.
And do you know what the current status is? Is Cheng on the line, or can you give an update on his behalf?
So we just like kind of finalized the design, like how to basically expose this PVC, what the changes needed, and I think it's not much code, so it should be okay. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. Next up is end-to-end test for capacity isolation. Any progress there?
I think Nick already have the PR. It's under review.
Okay.
So yes.
Yeah, the PR is merged.
Oh,
it's merged already? Oh, good.
okay. So I guess we can mark this as completed. Good job. Review and improve provision, attach, mount logs for ease of debuggability. David, are you on the line? Have you had a chance to take a look at this?
Yeah, so the status for this is still the same as before. I haven't started yet, but I don't expect it to take too much time.
Okay.
Same with this one.
Okay. Prevent the deletion when pod is being used. Paul?
Well, design is merged. I'm working on the implementation, and I hope I will create a PR before November 22nd.
Okay. And what approach is the design using?
It uses finalizers.
Perfect.
There will be, yeah, okay. So,
Design merged, implementation in progress. Prevent PV deletion when it is down to PVC, I guess same status there?
same status, yes.
Okay. Okay, next up is...
Sorry, I meant that it wasn't started, the PV deletion.
Oh, the work hasn't been started or the design?
Nothing was started.
Oh, okay. So there's, we're going to... Okay, so for 11.9, no work in progress. Okay, so it's possible we're going to need to punt this from this quarter.
Yes.
Okay, that is perfectly fine. Okay, month process missing volumes when actual state of the world, from actual state of the world.
Yeah, there's no design for this, but I have linked the GitHub issue, and I think we have a solution for this, like more than one solution actually. So I have also added it to today's agenda. So if we can get a chance to discuss the solution that I proposed there, we proposed there, me and Jing, so we can.
Okay. Enabling raw block for local storage, Michelle or Diraj?
Yeah, so Diraj checked in work to in the local storage provisioner to discover and clean up block devices, but we can't actually get the plugin work started until the general raw block feature is in.
Okay.
So that will probably be pushed out till 110.
Okay. And 110 is going to be known as 1.x, just like iPhone X.
Cool.
Next up is encryption of empty dir. Ahmad, did you have a comment?
I thought we pushed this to next quarter.
Okay. If that is the case, what I'm going to do is spell it out. Next up is backup of PVs. Sandeep, it looks like you have a design that you want to review today.
No, it's basically a high-level proposal. I want to float some ideas, so I want to discuss that today. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
No, it's okay if you're on that. I'm just gonna switch over.
And next up is investigating and surfacing metrics. Jing, I guess you could use this as the big overarching feature for the smaller capacity isolation work that you're doing.
I don't know, like, sorry, let Jing fill in, but we had a call, Jing, me, and Vaibhav about this.
Okay.
Jing?
Yes. So for this, with other like metrics, it's kind of different. I don't think we can just put everything into one item. Yeah.
And this would be more operational metrics, operation metrics.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we discussed using like creating some Grafana templates to surface the metrics. That seems like the easiest way we have for fixing this.
Okay.
Baro took ownership of this, but I don't know how busy he is of the yeah.
Sorry, who took ownership?
Vav.
Oh, okay. Cool. Bob, is that the case? I want to make sure that I'm not just putting your name down. Okay, we'll put a question mark there until he can verify it. Next up is detailed storage metrics for internal state. I don't know what that item is about.
So I opened a feature, this thing. I think we had a Google document where I discussed all the.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And there's a feature request and there's this thing also, but it's a. I don't know if I will have I can do some matrix, but I cannot do I think all the matrix proposed in that document for 1.9. It's just there's a lot to do and if someone can, some people have volunteered, but it still requires like coordinating all that effort to like make it.
Okay. Is anybody on the SIG interested in helping with this? So the background here is that there are a lot of interesting operational metrics that we can expose in the storage stack. Things like, do you have some good examples, Amante?
Yeah, things like how much time in total it took for attach operation, or things like how many times we had to like fix a volume because of some problem happened in the attach digest control, or things like how many times deleting a PVC failed because of the delete failed or something like that. So exposing all the internal data, that will be really, really useful for debugging the storage problems that we have.
So do we have anybody who's interested in jumping on this? Otherwise, we can punt it to next quarter.
This could be ongoing work, so we can introduce some metrics and we can introduce some more metrics in 1.10. It doesn't have, everything doesn't have to be done in one quarter. I think so.
It would be a good introductory project for folks who are sitting on the sidelines and interested in jumping in somewhere. Going once, going twice.
Hey, Todd.
Yes.
I'll do some investigation if anybody is interested. I know we're looking into metrics.
Okay. Is this Vlad?
Yeah, it's Vlad.
Okay.
If I come up with a name, I'll.
Okay. I'm gonna say Vlad might look or may have volunteers. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
And the last item here is support additional default flex volume plugin directory.
Yeah, hey Saad, this is Jared here.
Hey Jared.
So last SIG Storage meeting, I presented an initial proposal. I think you missed out on that because you were on PTO. And it's it seemed generally that we could go forward with this as a feature to try it out. So I've had the initial that proposal design document shared out, and I got some feedback and then pushback as well from Jordan Liggett. So we haven't really converged on that yet or gotten agreement on it. But if anyone else from this SIG wants to take a look at that doc, and provide some feedback or maybe some support for it, that would be definitely helpful. I updated this planning sheet last night with a link to it. but I don't see it in here, so maybe the edit wasn't approved.
Apparently this document, this planning spreadsheet was modified yesterday morning by somebody, and they removed some columns. And so I had to revert it to a previous version. So any changes made yesterday were lost. That's a warning for folks. If you're editing this doc, please be careful. But go ahead, Jared.
Yeah. Oh, so the feature repo issue number 500 there, that has a link to that document as well. So if anybody wants to read it there and provide some feedback or support, that'd be great.
And feel free to re-add your comments as well.
Cool. I think we've captured them here just fine.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Saad.
Okay, cool. Finished with the planning in exactly 20 minutes. That went well. Next up, PRs that need attention. Hemant has 552, 573.
So I think the bug itself, the top one doesn't have much. This thing you can do. So to give some background, we have like at least I know three problems that can cause a volume to be attached to a node. Like one that I found was like the controller manager crashes between starting an attach and the volume getting attached. Second is that attach finishing outside the expiry window. You should attach finishes outside the time we wait for attach to finish. Then the volume attaches outside and it remains permanently attached. Third thing I found out was because controller manager rebuilds the state by reading the node information, and if the node was restarted, if the node was shut down and then brought back, and in between controller manager was restarted or active controller manager switch happened, then in that case the volume information is permanently lost. So there are three cases, for example, that are known issues where like volumes are attached forever and they don't detach without manual intervention. So me and Jing and Jan, we had separate calls actually, but we discussed a bunch of ideas. We discussed tagging and we discussed some other things, but two solutions came up that looked very good, and we just wanted to discuss those approaches. One was that first one is that make attach errors carry additional context. Currently, when attach fails, all it returns is false and error. These two return values it returns. So I was thinking that it can return a specific error subtype, and that can carry the information where the volume is attached. And we can then go ahead and add that volume to actual state of the world with the node information, so that if it is not needed to be attached on that node, it will be detached and the dangling volume will be detached. The only so that's approach one. It seems very minimum, and each plugin can implement this error. I have actually already written some proof of concept code, and that works. So that but there's a downside. The downside is like it will not fix the volume until user tries to use the volume. So this the attach, if there's a dangling volume, and when user tries to use it, then only it will do this detach process. Otherwise, the volume will remain attached to the old node. Also, it does not fixes if the user tried to delete such a dangling volume, because delete operation expects the volume to be detached, and delete will not work. So, and Jan raised a point that like we are currently performing that 6-minute post detach, regardless of volume is mounted or not mounted. So that's a separate issue covered in separate bug, but basically we want to safeguard and include some safeguards against that. And the second approach was that Jing was suggesting was like poll for all volumes in disaster world and check if they're present, and call a describe volume call and check if it is attached somewhere, and if it is attached, add it to the actual state of the world.
But doesn't the logic already do this? Because it's going to, the reconciler is going to compare the desired state to actual state, and then it'll trigger the attach operation, and the attach operation essentially does that, doesn't it?
No, what she's saying is like, let's say the volume is attached to node X, and we are trying to and that actually attached detached controller is not aware that volume is attached to X because of whatever. But Now user is trying to use the same volume either on node X or node Y.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Y would be a problem. X wouldn't.
Yeah, X wouldn't be a problem, but Y will be a problem, and X could be also a problem, but it depends. But Y will be a problem. So that's what we poll for volumes, and we add the volume in the actual state of the world with X as the node where that attached it. So that will trigger a detach from the old node, and volume will be able to attach to the new node where it is actually present in desired state.
Mm-hmm.
So both the ideas are similar. Option 1, option 2. One is like, and both don't handle the case of the volume deleting, the user trying to delete a volume. But I like the first idea because it doesn't polls, and there are, in EBS and AWS in particular, we always have API quota problems. So any polling we introduce of cloud provider, it causes problems actually. So yeah.
So for your first proposal, could you expand on how this is going to help? I'm failing to see that. So your error.
Can you click on the code link? That link. Yeah. All right. So this is the code that returns that dangling error. So if before we attach, we do this we check if the volume is attached somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And here if we find the volume is attached, this only happens if the volume is not already attached. By the way. So if the volume is attached, then we return this volume util.new dangling error with the node name and device path, etc. Okay, we return this.
So you're preemptively checking before you start the operation.
We were checking anyways if the volume is attached. But now we are, rather than just returning a plain error, we are returning this new type of error, dangling error.
What do you do with the new type of error?
So in the same commit, if you go down, there's a change in operation generator code. Scroll down. Yes. So if there's an error, and if it is of type dangling attach error, then it extracts the current node and device path, and it adds to the actual state of the world.
Okay.
And that will make the volume detach.
Okay. I think I would lean towards this solution, the first one, rather than the second one, mostly because I don't want to hammer the cloud provider APIs. But I don't feel
jump
too
in there. Hey, at least on AWS, polling everything in the cloud provider APIs is cheap. What's expensive is so in other words, there's no difference between a fetch everything operation and a fetch one operation. So my knee jerk would be that number one is a very specific fix, whereas number two is a generic fix, and will solve all these issues, right? If we essentially reconcile the states with the actual state.
Both fix all the issues actually, not that one is generic fix. Both fix all the three bugs that we discovered, and both don't fix the problem with the volume being user trying to delete the volume, a dangling volume. So yeah, I think Zing, you like
what? Where's can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I think the first one, one small issue right now, I think is if the node does not belong to.
I went to Sunnyvale yesterday afternoon.
I'm sorry. So basically, when a volume was attached to some node, right, and later you don't know that volume attached to that node anymore. You're trying to attach to some other node. That's the issue we are trying to fix. And the previous node could no longer in the system. So I think we have a check if the node is not belonging to the state. We don't escape the volume or something. So that might cause a little bit issue, but we can investigate a little bit more.
I mean, I agree with that the second solution would be a little bit more robust because it could possibly catch other errors, whereas number one is more targeted. Both will fix the issue as we currently understand it, but two could potentially catch other issues because it tries to fix the actual state. But it is more expensive, and I don't know if all cloud providers are going to be able to have batch APIs to be able to fetch which volumes are attached to which nodes. So it could be costly. I remember the last time we made a change like this, it ended up blowing up AWS, but in this case, AWS doesn't sound like it would be a problem.
Yes, so I think
actually
we might need to calculate the cost and then to be sure like which one is better, or like put more details. So
Okay.
right now I cannot say like one of them must be better, or yeah.
Okay, I don't have a strong opinion either way. For folks who do, I'd recommend commenting on the issue, and then I'll leave it to Hemant and Jing to make the actual call. Something else I'd like to point out is that for CSI, we're introducing a new object, a volume attachment object, and a large part of the attach logic is now going to be handled by an external attacher specific to each volume. This is going to help us in a number of ways. One is that now the attached state is actually going to be persisted across crashes of the actual controller manager because it's persisted in the API. And the second thing is that we can implement different logic for different volume plugins. And eventually what we're planning on doing is moving the volume attachment logic, not just having it as part of CSI, but moving it into a more common central location for all volume plugins, all the entry volume plugins. And doing so, we might be able to simplify the attach-detach controller further and move more of the complexity off to the volume plugins themselves. So that's something to keep in mind as you invest in this effort.
Yeah, that'll be like, guys, I was planning to use volume attachment object in general before CSI, but yeah, I'm
Nice.
so.
Okay, so let's keep moving. Next up is design reviews, and Sandeep has 20 minutes to discuss backup of PVs. Sandeep, I'm going to stop sharing so that you can share your screen.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Step 1, step 2. The Google Doc. Okay, so I'm assuming that you guys can see this doc that I have on my screen.
Yes.
Okay, so the main thing I want to do here is I want to float some ideas around like how do we back up and restore position. And to give a background, so I'm actually from VMware. I'm a tech lead in VMware. I work on one of the projects that I work on is the cloud provider for VMware, vSphere cloud provider. And some of our customers actually came back and asked, hey, we are using vSphere to put our volumes in. Now, how do I take a backup of these volumes? Because I want to go production, I want to do backup. So, we had a couple of options. One option is we could give a VMware specific solution, or we thought, hey, why not just give a very generic solution to Kubernetes, and that way we can contribute to Kubernetes community as well. So that's the background. And when we started thinking about this, one of the things that came up is the meaning of snapshot operation is slightly different compared. If you compare like public cloud providers like GCE, Amazon, or Azure, in these kind of worlds, a snapshot basically means you're actually taking a point-in-time snapshot and you're actually doing a backup to some other storage, right? But that is not how things work in other non-public cloud vendors, like whether it is any storage vendor providers or VMware, vSphere, or any of these guys. So in the other world, non-public storage world, a snapshot basically means we just take a point-in-time snapshot of the volume. That's it. We don't do any backup or anything like that. It's a separate workflow to actually do a backup. And use backup to tape drive or NAS, SAN, whatever you want, right? So since this seems to be a common problem, we thought let us think about this, and I have some approaches here and want to float this idea among you guys. So that's basically the main problem that we are trying to solve. And let me take the use cases. The main use cases is the customers wants to do backup and restore, right? So now the different scenario that would be involved is if the customer deploys Kubernetes cluster in a private data center that is creating volumes on SAN, NFS, or whatever storage you have, how would you enable backup and restore? That's one use case. Another use case that we were thinking is even if Kubernetes cluster is actually deployed on public cloud vendors like AWS, Azure, GCE, there may be use cases where the customer may think, I do want to take backup to I want to take backup to some other cloud storage, or maybe to my local local storage that I have within my data center. So those kind of use cases may also be there. So at a high level, these were the simple use cases that I came that we just put it across, and we do want to solve it in a generic way for this. And so just to give a very high level overview of backup and restore, I guess a lot of you guys may already know, but here's a very high level overview, and a lot of steps are actually involved in doing it. At high level, backup basically means you basically take a temporary snapshot, requires the file system or whatnot, and then once you do this, then what typically all backup software does is they will do a copy, and the copy could involve either a full copy of the entire disk. The first time you do it, there is no option; you have to do a full copy, and the incremental backups can actually be done on incremental data. Once you do this copy operation, and then you just remove the temporary snapshot. Basically, your data is being copied to a backup data. And the restore is restore basically the customer would be interested in doing this restore only when something goes wrong, your data is corrupted or whatever. In that case, you make sure that this is not being used, and just use the backup software to copy the data from the backup object, whatever backup device you have, from there to your actual disk. Right? And if you just look around, there are a lot of backup vendors who does this kind of thing. I've just listed on a couple of things here, but when I just did a Google search and read an article, there are more than 25 vendors who are actually doing backup and restore, and basically these guys are experts in doing this. So, this is so I just want to stop here and just ask, do you guys have anything to comment here, or is the problem clear, or just want your thoughts before I go into the solutions that we thought of?
Hey Sandeep.
Yeah.
Your voice is low. Can you use a microphone if it's possible?
I actually use a microphone that looks like it's not working, so I thought.
I see.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Let me just talk closer so that way.
I'm not having any issues hearing him.
Oh, I see.
He's coming through clearly for me.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so to summarize, all we are trying to say here is the problem is that depending on how you are deployed Kubernetes cluster and where you are deployed it, there will be use cases where customers want to take backup. They may have some favorite backup vendors, probably because they are already using them. How can we solve this problem in a generic way? That's the problem.
So the major difference between a snapshot and a backup, as you've stated it, it sounds like, is that a snapshot is something that the storage system is built into the storage system itself, and a backup would be potentially an external tool that is doing a bit-by-bit copy.
Exactly. Yeah, precisely. That's right.
And the snapshot design as currently proposed is not sufficient to handle this because why?
Because these two are separate operations altogether, and at least I can talk about like VMware vSphere. So when somebody does a snapshot, we actually do it really very quickly. It hardly takes any time to do a snapshot, and we don't have any backup software as such. We expose primitive APIs so that backup vendors out there, they can actually build backup software.
Yeah, I don't even think they should be commingled, because doing a snapshots can be valuable for purposes other than backups. And when you do one of these backups, it's extremely likely that you've got federated separate instances of Kubernetes involved. So having this under the wrapper of one just is problematic. So I think maybe this is a separate layer that could use the snapshotting facility, but shouldn't be tightly coupled, but just my personal opinion.
Yes, but the thing is, on Amazon AWS, what happens is whenever you take snapshot of EBS volume, internally they create S3 object. It is as good as taking backup. So from that perspective, Sandeep is saying in public cloud environment like Amazon, whenever you take snapshot, it involves copying data to S3 object also, which is not true in on-premise data centers like VC.
But I mean, one thing I would like to mention is I look at snapshot as a primitive or as a building block which you can use for multiple workflows, and backup restore is a workflow or a use case. So regardless of what a particular public cloud is doing, that shouldn't dictate how Kubernetes should do it. Just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So OpenStack Cinder defines backup and snapshot in exactly the same way that's been suggested here. A snapshot is whatever your storage does natively, quite often a highly optimized copy on write type magic, whereas a backup is a bit-by-bit copy. I wrote the backup software for Cinder, and I have a few comments that might be relevant. Tell me to shut up if they're not. But the first one is that the performance for backups quite often sucks. Backing up a terabyte can take hours and hours and hours, and the state management and error handling and stuff around that is quite complex. People very quickly want more intelligent backup, differential backup and that sort of thing, because doing a full copy ends up being impractical. You certainly want to be backing up a snapshot, not the original volume. Again, because that time lag tends to they can't have their volume for 20 hours, tends to make them stop using the facility pretty quick. And the other one is writing an API that different backup vendors can make good use of, ends up being extremely difficult. They need different metadata, they need different information. You end up with systems that only work in certain combinations. So, a lot of things can't back up Ceph. Well, if Ceph's your main storage, you can't use most of the backup software because you can't talk to Ceph. So you end up having to either write adapters or all kinds of crazy things. So these were our experiences in Cinder, and Cinder backup is still the weakest element of Cinder, and we never came to good solutions to most of these problems. We defined the backup must be generic, but that means we use adapter code all over the place that makes the performance suck even more.
That's really good insight. We should be very careful as we proceed with this to make sure that it makes sense in the Kubernetes API.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. So let me just talk about the idea that we had, right? So here are the different approaches we thought of. I'm just stepping to this. So basically, we thought of 3 different solutions that we could have. One solution is, hey, just don't do anything. Let us just rely on the snapshot operators, the volume snapshotting that some of the folks in SIG Storage is working on. What does it mean, right? So what it basically means is, let's say the user who's a customer here, he's going to use his own backup software, or whatever he is comfortable with, or whatever he is already using for other purposes. and the backup software would have to talk to Kubernetes to do the snapshot volume operation that anyways would be available in few probably in some release. And then the backup software would have to know what is the infrastructure that is available on which the Kubernetes volumes are placed on, right? Depending on what infrastructure it is, it would have its own way of taking, reading the data and actually taking a backup of it. So basically, the backup software in this approach is basically infra-aware. It's going to get more and more complex. But then again, it works. The only thing is that there is no support from Kubernetes for backup. That's the thing here. And now, if you see the pros or the advantages of this approach, the main advantage I can see is there is no work to be done in Kubernetes. Basically, just scrap this proposal and go back to the volume provisioning time. So the con of this approach is that the backup software vendors who are actually experts in doing it, we are not bringing them on board easily. We are making their work complex, so they become infra-aware. And then the one common thing is that the user will have to manage this third-party software for doing for taking the backup and restore operations. So it becomes yet another component for the user to manage, which probably most of the customers may be okay with it or not okay with it. It depends on the situation. So that is one solution. One solution is, hey, don't do anything for Kubernetes. That's the high level. Second solution is, let me go here. So in this solution, what we are proposing is we will add some Kubernetes APIs to basically support backup and restore operations. So like in this particular case, the user would actually say, hey, take backup and here's the backup request. And the backup request may capture some information like how often you want to do backup and things like that. And then what we could do is we could come up with backup and restore controller, and these can have some backup software in it, or we have to write ground up. And once the request comes to Kubernetes API server, the backup controller can actually take a snapshot of the volume, basically talking to the Kubernetes API server to do that. Once the snapshot is being taken, then it can actually coordinate with the volume plugin to actually read the data, write the data, to actually perform the backup. So in this particular solution, what we are saying is we are kind of writing a generic backup software in Kubernetes and exposing APIs so that users can users can request for backup, users can query for backup objects, and if something goes wrong, the user can also restore from a backup. That is another approach we could take. So now, what are the pros of this? The biggest advantage of this is that the backup and restore feature would be available out of the box in Kubernetes. You deploy Kubernetes, you're gonna get it. It could be in a very minimalistic form in the beginning. Later on, we can add functionalities as and when we need it. That's the biggest advantage. The other disadvantage is that we are not really leveraging backup software here. I told you guys that backup software vendors, these guys, they are like experts in doing it. They've been doing it for ages. So this would not benefit them. That is one approach we could take. And to me, the couple of open questions in my mind were, hey, can all volume plugins support reading and writing PV? I'm not sure. I can say that vSphere can support. I don't know if other volume plugins can support. That's something to think about.
Sandeep, one question. So when you say you are not sure whether other volume plugins can support it or not, is it that they will never be able to support it, or they don't support it today? Because if it is the latter, then they can be fixed, right?
Yeah. So since I don't have knowledge about all the other volume plugins, that is the reason why I say it's an open question for me. The people who are working on the volume plugins for specific providers, they'll have better answer at this.
Yeah, I mean, just one last point on this is, so what I'm saying is that if this is a new proposed functionality, the fact that it does not exist today doesn't stop it, right? I mean, if this is something that if we decide to go with approach 2 for Kubernetes, then every volume provider who is interested in supporting this functionality can make a call for themselves, right? Lack of support today doesn't block it.
Yes, yes.
That's
yes.
it. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. All right. So I'll talk about the third solution that we actually thought about. So in this solution, we are actually, so here's the user, right? The user deploys Kubernetes cluster, and the user already has a backup software that he's already using it. And actually, what he could do is he can configure the backup software so that the backup of PVs can be performed. But the biggest advantage here, or in fact, the biggest change here is that we are going to add Kubernetes API primitives like reading PV, writing PV, whatever, like whatever APIs are needed to actually perform backup and restore. We are going to add API primitives here. And the backup software only has to talk to Kubernetes API server using those primitives to actually perform the backup. And somehow within Kubernetes, we will have to figure out, we need to figure out a way to talk to volume plugin to actually read and write data. Snapshot is something that we already figured out. Reading and writing and whatever is needed for backup is something we'll have to figure out. That is this solution 3. And as I said, the biggest advantage is that the backup software vendors will make their job much easier to perform backup and restore of PVs. And the con for me in this approach is we never had data path APIs in Kubernetes so far. Most of them, they were like control APIs, create a pod or create PVs and things like that. But in my opinion, this is the first time, I guess, we are trying to add a data path APIs. I'm not sure if this is the right approach. This is something that I want to get comments on.
So my opinion on that is I would be strongly against adding Kubernetes into the data path. So far, it's been in the control path. That's worked very well. It's an orchestration system. Injecting ourselves into the data path should have a very, very high precedence. And the second bit of feedback is that this does not necessarily need to go into the Kubernetes core. The Kubernetes project is becoming more and more modularized and decomposed. And what's starting to happen is that the core of Kubernetes is essentially like the kernel, and there's a very high bar for getting into the kernel. And what you proposed in solution 2 and possibly even solution 3, you could actually build with the existing Kubernetes primitives using things like CRDs and writing your own controller. That might be a better place to start to figure out the viability of this, is just to do that. And then if it looks like it's a solid approach and you have customers using it and it's, it makes a lot of sense, then try to pull it back into the kernel.
I see. Okay. So that's pretty much what I had, the 3 solutions that I want to discuss and get some comments. So I'll be looking forward to like any comments or thoughts on this. You guys can reach out to me.
Okay. So Saad, one question. So this is Tushar from VMware. So I'm slightly confused by what the next steps are. So do you propose that we should pick an approach, prototype it, figure out what works, and then follow up with the community, or?
If you have interest from the community, I'd say have them collaborate, make this an open source project. But my suggestion would be to have it external to the Kubernetes core for prototype and for testing and for figuring out the viability of it. And if you come up with something that makes a lot of sense and you have customers using it and it makes sense to adopt into the Kubernetes core, then we can talk about that as the next step. At this point, having it be a project that's incubated for the core doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't know how other people feel about this. I'd like to hear what Steve Water and other folks have to say.
Hey, hi, this is Rohit here. So do we have any numbers, how many volumes we support in Kubernetes? Let's say in production, if I have, let's say 500 volumes, so taking backup of 500 volumes through approach 2 or approach 3, Kubernetes will get involved more and more into I/O, and actual control path will get affected because of that, because all our Kubernetes hosts will be busy with the I/O.
Yep.
So that is something to consider. So in scale, I think approach 1 will make sense because backup software can directly talk to SAN environment and get the data instead of going through Kubernetes nodes. But in general, what is our scale limits that we support today in Kubernetes? How many volumes, how many nodes? Do we have any official statement?
I don't think we have exact numbers, but let's wrap this conversation up. We have 1 minute left in this meeting. I want to make sure that we get to the remaining agenda items. Do folks want to take this conversation offline, maybe start a thread on SIG Storage mailing list, or what do you think?
Yeah, I'll start a thread in SIG Storage.
Okay. All right, cool. Let's jump to the next agenda item, which is KubeCon Storage SIG Planning. Apparently there's going to be an AMA at KubeCon. For folks who are going to be attending from this SIG, please come and share your expertise with others in the community. It's a great place to have a high bandwidth discussion. I'm not sure who's leading this. Is it Steve Watt? I'm not sure.
Yeah, this session shows as Steve Watt.
Okay. So reach out to Steve Watt if you're interested in participating in that. And that's it for today.
Is that session already scheduled? Does it already have a date and time?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it looks like it's 2 p.m. on December 7th.
Hey, Said. Hello?
Yes.
Hey, this is Yunwen Bai from Huawei. I actually proposed 5 minutes, but look like we are cutting short. I guess for the dynamic provisioning of local storage proposal, we probably can sharing the information from the SIG mailing list. I think that might be okay for us. All our proposal or want is the feedback from the community and from this group. And the feedback, pushback is all welcome. I will share the Google Doc shortly this week.
Great. So go ahead and send that out to SIG Storage, the mailing list, and then we'll put you into the next meeting in 2 weeks.
What was
Sounds great.
What was the topic? I didn't catch that, Saad.
It's that. Maybe I take 1 minute to describe
Sure,
a little
go
bit
ahead.
more. Okay, yeah. So basically, in one internal project, Huawei has been doing the dynamically provisioned local storage is needed. So this is be part of our internal project already. So in some other thread and other review of especially Michelle's design proposal for the topology aware scheduling part, and we realized that dynamic provisioning of local storage is pretty much needed in other areas as well. So we would like to share our design approach to the community to make sure we are aligned with the community in the high level direction to go, the design, the changes we made to it, and make sure we won't get kind of a different direction with the community, what we think with what we propose to do. So that's all the purpose.
Okay, and I've actually started a Google Doc for that. I haven't shared it out. It's based on Michelle's topology idea, because local and block are going to be along the same lines. So we thought we would consolidate the development of that. So I will attach that to your email, and maybe we can discuss further, because I think that's really key to making those features shine.
That's great. Is it Aaron, right? Is that
Yes,
Aaron?
this is Aaron. I'm sorry.
Great. Yeah, nice to meet you. And yeah, maybe we can have touch base offline a little bit and see how we can consolidate and incorporate the work.
Sounds great. I look forward to it. Thanks.
Sounds great. Yeah, cool.
All right, folks, thanks very much. We're a little bit over time. Take care, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Great. Thank you.